pleased to overcome those shortcomings and to achieve some better results.
Sir.
So this all are part of these things.
Yes, sir. No, we may see a flow of info plan, execution, methodology, conduct, handling of casualty, PW, pertinent lessons for today's junior leadership and your message systems. So this would be generally. तो सर हम इसको अभी मतलब we have some time हम इसको pen down करके आप अपनी मर्जी के साथ इसका layout करके and then you can have those notes made for you ताकि आप जब बोलते जाएं तो you can always see कैमरे में हाँ बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम. Well gentlemen, we are privileged to have with us Brigadier Hamid, then Major Hamid, company commander of the Daler company, who had done a wonderful job during 19 FF Battalion Shakargarh. We have him with us to listen to his memoirs and get educated and inspired from his experience. Sir, it's over to you, and we would be honored to listen what all that day on night 13, 14, 15 December 1971, what happened. Over to you, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm very grateful to the Retd and their staff to have considered our unit action 19FF, then part of, because I belong to that unit, and part of my company's contribution in the war at Shakargarh. And the event goes back to my memories. When I joined this battalion had served at many places. I had the opportunity to serve in former East Pakistan, and in that place I happened to give the duty as a guard duty to Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Then also I was attached with General Yahya Khan for a while as a ADC also. I saw the events of the former East Pakistan and then the break-off of East Pakistan. But before that I had joined West Pakistan in the intelligence unit. And I will relate one very important event here, that we all are Muslim, those who Muslim believe in the faith, and the event which takes place, these are all, I think, gifted by the God. And for those who survive the enemy action and they emerge as Ghazis, I think they have also the same sort of standing in our religion, as a Ghazi or a Shaheed, both. But those who sacrifices their life is basically for that you give your life so that other must live. Now, the event of my life in my unit and the activity which took place at Shakargarh starts back to a small narration. I prayed to Allah that when I was serving in my intelligence unit, that I should go back to my battalion, because I had the interest, I had the desire to fight the enemy. And that was the reason when I joined the army. So when I was in intelligence, I had applied to go back to my battalion. It was not being considered. My application was rejected by the GHQ. One Friday prayers, I requested my mother to pray for me that I must go back to my battalion, and I joined them. My battalion was at Shakargarh. So I remember that she prayed for me, and on the same very day and the same very moment, I received a signal from GHQ to be posted back to 19FF, and then I was a captain. So when I joined the battalion at Shakargarh, we knew that the war is imminent. In East Pakistan, the situation had deteriorated and the things were getting very bad to worse. Then I was in the battalion. I joined as a company commander, and the CO, the commanding officer, that time was Colonel Sanjeev. He was at Sialkot, but he was being replaced by a new officer. We had two options. One was with Bengali officer, Major Isam. The other was Major Shafiq Ahmed. And I was standing with my CO as I rode with him, with Colonel Sanjeev. And I still remember the MS called him and asked him, out of two officers, you have to choose one. You have 25% Bengalis with you, and those 25% Bengalis, you have a Bengali officer as a son. I think it will be advisable to have a Bengali CO in 19FF. I was standing next to him, and Colonel Sanjeev just asked me that, Hamid, what do you think? So I still remember that I said, I knew that the Colonel Shafiq was a very tough master, but I told him that, sir, for the battalion, and for the training of the battalion, and if you have to go for operation, I would recommend that you should ask BMS to adjust Colonel Major Shafiq to be the Lieutenant Colonel of 19FF. Because he was ex-3rd FF, because he had fought in 3rd FF, he had already received the SJ, and he was interested in going to probably 3rd FF, but we managed to get him there. Now in the same context, I would like to just give you one event that in Dhaka, there was a amalgamation between the Bengalis. There was induction of Bengalis in the Pakistan, East Pakistan and West Pakistan amalgamation. So the first integrated battalion, in that I was also one of the platoon commander in Dhaka Stadium, where Sabia Yaqub was the brigade commander, the chief guest, and he gave a speech in Bengali. And 25% Bengalis were inducted in my battalion. So in that event, I still remember that he gave a speech in Bengali, and he gave the name of our unit as Piffer Tigers, because Bengalis, they joined the Piffer, so we became, Bengalis were known as Tigers, so we became, from then onward, the Piffer Tigers. We were known as Piffer Tigers. So when I joined my battalion in Sialkot, and we were all out for training and all that, I remember we took almost about 14 to 15 counter-pen positions for the division, because our brigade was considered as a reserve brigade to go in for counter-pen or counter-attack positions. So in those days, we had to dig in many counter-pen positions all over Sialkot, Zafarwal, Narowal, Shakargarh, Damtal, and these are all places which I now remember. These were the places where we had to dug in for the counter-pen positions. So we were getting trained physically and mentally also, that we are getting into some action. Now, our first task of 14 Para Brigade was to go in for a Damtal, there was Dharam Enclave, and we had to, because enemy had some area which was across the river, so there was a post known as Chirag Nagli post. So our battalion was tasked to first, in the initial stage, in the planning was that we would go for a Chirag Nagli post. And I remember we were sitting in the mess, and in the mess, the CO, then he had got promoted, he was Lieutenant Colonel Shafiq Ahmed, a very brave person. So he asked the volunteers who would like to go for an initial attack. So I remember it was me and then Captain Masood. We two volunteered. He was commanding Bahadur Company, Bravo Company, I was commanding Blade Company. So he took me and Captain Masood, we went in for Recce. I remember one night, and we were just crossing close to Dharam Enclave. We just, out of blue, he thought that let's go and Recce the Chirag Nagli post. And I just pointed out that, sir, we don't have weapon. He said, we will manage it, we'll just sneak in and just observe that. We have a binocular, we will go from a distance. So I still remember that when we got into shoots along grass, and we managed to go to the, very close to the Chirag Nagli post. And we could hear the enemy, the 6th talking, the guard was talking, and we could hear that. So you can imagine that without weapon, we had crawled down to the extent of going almost about 200, less than 100 yards, about 100 feet. So that was basically the commanding officer was training us. And then, because we had to go in an attack for a Chirag Nagli post, which was all across the river, in that there was very high roots known as long grass. The CO would take us to sugarcane field. There was also sugarcane field, lot of in Sialkot area. So he would push us there and see that how we cross the sugarcanes in the formations. So when we were getting trained, this is what I am trying to explain, is how we were getting trained for the ultimate objective, that is to fight the enemy. So one evening, I still remember that suddenly we came to know that this was just before the war, that the brigade major of 14th Para Brigade had defected. Actually, he took his car and his family to a place close to Sialkot, and he left his car and crossed over to India. So he was a brigade major. It was considered that he must have taken some documents and some information regarding the operational plan of 14th Para Brigade. So in that context, the whole planning was changed. So our brigade, 14 Para Brigade, was initially which was tasked to go in for a Chirag Nagari post and Dharavan place. We had 20 Punjab also as a part of the 14 Para Brigade. So we were tasked to go in and defend Shakargarh. Now I still remember, although we were junior officers, but there was some sort of a discussion going on between the senior command that how to defend Shakargarh, Zafarwal and Narowal. The division task was probably, and there was some dispute between two general officers like General Ehsan and some other one. And they were thinking that we go into each inch of the area and extend ourselves to the border post and defend them, don't allow the enemy to come in. But I think the sense prevailed and they thought that we should only defend major points like Shakargarh, Narowal, Zafarwal and all that, and put the battalion, each brigade in this area. So when we, before the war, we moved into Shakargarh, there, of course, we were very, at the time, I think I remember we were close to December that when we moved in. I don't exactly remember the date, but it was very close to the December war. When the brigade headquarters moved into the area like rest house, and in that rest house, there was many conferences and all that, because I was tasked to go in for a brigade advanced positions, myself, and then we had another major, Nasir, he was commanding Alpha Company, Ali Company. So we too were tasked to act as a brigade advanced position or a screen you can call it. So I was sent to area Klaspur, Band, which probably still exists, close to the river Ravi. And there I deployed myself in. We had some RNS element which was not under my command, but it was the brigade stream. So it was very strange that maybe a lesson to be learned is that when you have a brigade screen in its respective area or a certain area, there has to be some centralized command. So that platoon, RNS platoon, was not given to under my command as a company commander. But anyway, nevertheless, so we deployed ourselves at the Klaspur Band. And I remember the night before the war started, officers, commanding officer of 13 Lancer and the rest of the officers, they came over. And it was evening. I requested them that they must have a dinner with me and before they go. And the CEO were very nice. All the officers of 13 left. Later on, many of them got shaheed. They had dinner with me. And it was early dinner before last night. After that, they left. And when they left, I saw two of our aircrafts crossing just over us. And then I heard some blast, probably from the Klaspur side, if you can measure the distance of Pathankot airfield, which was not very far off. But we could hear some blast because I think they did drop some. And after I think about half an hour after that, I received a call from the brigade headquarters that guns are open, that the West Pakistan front is also, troops are at war. And they had, I had the battery, one of the battery, artillery battery with me, and the battery commander was with me. He told me that I have also received a message from the headquarters that the guns are open. So it was very strange, first time going into action and all that. And I knew the enemy, we used to observe the enemy at that time because the school post was next to the Klaspur Band. When the Band finishes, thereafter there was a small enclave where enemy had the small post known as school post. So I told that battery commander that look, if the guns are open, then why can't we fire? He said, you are the commander, you give me order, I will open the fire. So it was just like young officer being excited, getting into a war position. So I told him that we should first hit the enemy across the Band, across the river where the enemy position was there. So we both sat on the map and decided that how to go about. So I said first we should fire one round gunfire, and then one round fire, and then we can adjust our fire to the position. So it had almost got dark. That battery commander was also very excited, and so we just got one round of the artillery fired onto the enemy. That we initiated that. Because we could see that the Indians were, we former East Pakistan were going and they were attacking us and all that. So those news were coming to us because in my platoon, my company, we had 25% Bengalis. And I remember that one of my wireless operator, they were educated people. Bengalis were very educated and very motivated people. He would always sit next to me, and because he was my signaler, and he had not received a mail almost about 6 months from his family. And one day he asked me that, sir, when we are going to get over with this problem and this war and all that. I said, it just started. So I promised with him that if the CO gives you 2 months leave, I will give you extra 2 months leave. So you can enjoy 4 months leave when the war is over. So he was very happy that the company commander has promised me 4 months leave when I go back to my family after the war. So anyway, the first round was fired, and I cannot, now it's very, very horrifying. The first round of our gun went on to a village, unfortunately, because the enemy position was ahead of the village, but the round landed in the village, close to village. But there was nobody had spoken. So I told my battery commander that, look, now we know exactly where the round has landed. So you can drop that to another 50, and that would be the exact enemy position, and 1 round, 1 fire. So I'm just narrating this event that this is how I had the first battle inoculation, physical. So all the 1 round gun was fired, and unfortunately that landed into village. And I could hear, because village was very close, I could hear the civilians shouting. So I remember after first day there was no action. Then our CO took an initiative that the enemy school post, which was they were protruding to our area, so they decided to, in their own initiative, the CO decided that Ali Company, 1 platoon, should attack and capture that post, and I was tasked to support that platoon. So we remember that we fired the RR on the post, their listening post. Probably, I remember they were watching the tower. The 2 men were sitting on the tower when we fired the RR round, and they fell down. And so that 3 square mile area was captured. And after that, there was immediately behind that there was a small village and all that. So I remember after that we had captured almost about 400 to 500 buffaloes, and that we collected. My company was there, so we sent those buffaloes back to Shakargarh to the people. So this event took place from almost till about 9th of December, and the enemy was also only busy on shelling to our area and to our company positions and all that. So I would narrate another very small incident, that is why a soldier, dedication of a soldier. I remember that when I was to go for inspection of my company at night, I had asked them to do this stand to, and nobody will move. And one day I felt that when I was checking my company, I said somebody was following me. And I tried to go to a corner of the band, and from there I wanted to fire back. I thought that was an enemy. And that happened to be, I felt that man was not an enemy, but he looked like to be a Pakistani soldier. And suddenly I stopped, just stopped it. Asked, and I learned that he was my batman. And when I asked him why the hell he was following me, so he told me, sir, you walk alone at night, and there is chances that enemy patrol can come and can capture you. So I was always following you. So that was the motivation we had from the Jawan. A love for their commanders. The Jawan was very motivated, and this was the situation we had in our battalion. And then, of course, on 9th, probably the enemy had attacked on the right side of our advanced position, and I remember that RNS platoon being withdrawn. That was from 21 Frontier Regiment. And at that night, I received an order from the brigade headquarters to withdraw to control point 222. That was a Beri Kala in between Klaspur and Shakargarh. So when I withdrew from Beri Kala, and I will here also give a short brief on the situation on the ground, the enemy was firing, and there was a woman who had given birth to a child in that village, and I had learned that from my own company sources. and I sent my RP person to that village to tell that lady or to collect that lady to take her, because we were withdrawing. I told everybody from there to evacuate and leave. So when my Havaldar came back and he told me that that I just forgot after that, and it only I came to know next day that that lady had refused to go back because she said that only my husband can take me back, I will not leave that village. And I believed when the Indian came in that area later on, there was some sort of a news in the paper that that woman was raped and that woman was molested and all that. That was a very unfortunate incident, which I learned later on after the war. So when I was reaching control point 222, and then I learned that the brigade headquarters had asked. Before that, I will just say that when I received the message from the brigade headquarters to withdraw, because we were on the brigade screens, so I just wanted to reconfirm this thing from my CO, Commanding Officer General Shafiq, now General Shafiq, and he came to me immediately by jeep, and he said, I would like to see a withdrawal plan. So I remember that we had made out a plan that one platoon from left, one from right, and then center will be covering fire, and then we would withdraw. So we withdrew to the Shakargarh. Now, interestingly, when we reached Shakargarh and we had gone to our company position in Shakargarh, the same night, in the morning, I was told that I learned that one of my platoon, which was deployed on the left side of the bunk, had forgot their bedding. So I thought this is criminal that we leave our bedding there, and when the Indians comes in and they see these bedding, and they will make a lot of propaganda element. So in the morning I sent a fighting patrol. We went there, and the enemy had still not come, because last night it was all shelling and all that, and the enemy, after even one day, a complete one day and one night, they had not entered that village and that area. So we quietly brought our bedding back to this. While I had come back, then suddenly we learned that a brigade counterattack is being planned to the enemy, and 8th Armour Brigade was to launch a enveloping movement. The 2 regiment was to go from right and left, and I was told to reoccupy my advanced positions. So I was sitting on the bunk all the night. I remember that when the brigade counterattack was launched. But in the morning I learned that this attack was called back and the 2 battalion regiments were withdrawn. And probably while they were withdrawing, they left their 4 tanks behind, and next morning the enemy air came and they fired at those tanks. So this was the situation. So you can imagine that a company which had gone to brigade forward advanced position, then withdrawing it under the enemy fire, and then coming again, going in for the so we were physically we were under stress. But anyway, nevertheless, but the spirits were so high that each man, each Jawan was ready to do whatever it was. So when I came back to my battalion, the CO then told me that as my old position was left of the battalion, and I was also to provide a deck to the battalion. Here I would say we were all almost covering almost about 17 to 18,000 yard area. So I was deployed along the railway line. CO told me that you recce immediately all the company positions, and you should know exactly where the companies are located, and so that if in case there is a counter-attack, you should be able to counter-attack all these places. So it was again a task for me to go in for recce and all that. During the recce, I met Major Afzal, who was commanding Charlie Company, Chatak Company, and I had some lunch with him and all that. Later on, he was shaheed in the war. But I remember that I had some idea during that recce paid me a lot, because that reconnaissance I knew the exact position of battalion, my companies, my platoons, and where all the weapons are located, where the major weapons were deployed. So in this process, it was only, now we reached to the 13 and 14, and I will come to the night in which I had to go in for that. So it was almost about at 8 o'clock night when I received a message from the commanding officer that the enemy has attacked Dinpur. Dinpur was the right forward platoon, the platoon of Bhadur Company that was deployed along the Bain. If you have knowledge of the Shakargarh locations, Dinpur, where the enemy attacked. So you have to quickly go in for a counter-attack. So if you can calculate the distance from my position Phulwadi to Dinpur, it is almost about 8 to 10,000 yards. So I quickly, whatever I could gather, so I gathered my 2 platoons. And 1 platoon, that was a 12 platoon, was luckily was deployed on the railway line. So since the time was the biggest essence requirement, so I just ignored that 12 platoon. I told them, you come later on, but I cannot wait for you to join me. So I, along with my men, rushed to the Bahadur Company, that is B Company area, where the enemy had first attacked. The 4 grenadiers had attacked the enemy. And while I was in the process of attack, I was promised that I will get 3 tanks in that area with me. They will join me. But unfortunately, the tank had not reached yet. So I attacked that village. In that process, of course, we suffered some casualties. The Indian also, we captured some Indians also there. And Indian dead, probably later on 10 dead was also Indians. 10 dead and probably more than
4 days.
4 deads. 4 deads. So I just remember that it was something like that. So when I reoccupied that position, at that time, my 12 platoon, message from my 12 platoon came in that now we are getting together at the company headquarters, and now what is the next move? But meantime, CO informed me that he has received a major attack from the left of the battalion, that is the Chitrana forest and Chitrana area and Tera area. So you immediately rush back, and where is your 12 platoon? So I informed him, and so 12 platoon was given. I told my platoon commander to immediately report to the battalion headquarters. Battalion headquarters was not very far off, so they rushed to the battalion headquarters. There I learned that the 12 platoon, along with the adjutant, quartermaster, Durbin, I, CO, they attacked that area of high ground next to the battalion headquarters. That was across the Chitrana village. So there our adjutant got injured, and certainly that was the position. So meantime I was rushing back, and I was supposed to left 1 platoon in that area of Dinpur, where the enemy had come in, and now I had pushed back the enemy, and I was trying to reorganize myself. So CO told me that I now find that major attack is coming from, that was a fake attack, that was a secondary attack for India to draw our reserve. So with the leaving 1 platoon, and she told me that collect pioneer platoon which was deployed in between Bahadur Company and the Tera village. So collect that pioneer platoon along with you, and that. So this was a very unique incident, that a pioneer platoon, company headquarters, platoon of other 12 platoon, other platoons, they were all spread out, and we were all the time were rushing and firing and shouting and everything. With that vigor and that strength, although running 10 or 10,000 yard area was not an easy task. It's almost 5 to 8 miles, and then coming back again. So this process was going on. So I managed to get hold of the pioneer platoon, also some men of the pioneer platoon, and I rushed back to the battalion headquarters. Now this was, you can imagine, a company commander with the resources of about 75 men with me. And 1 platoon was left at battalion headquarters. So communication was good. This was a very sense of their success also. I would later on, in the lessons, I would say the very important aspect, the lesson we can learn is the communication. You must have a very good communication with your men all the time. So this was the situation was building up. I reached battalion headquarters. When I reached battalion headquarters, the first phase of the attack had finished almost. The adjutant was injured, and the CO had come back to the battalion headquarters, and there he briefed me, and he told me that the enemy is now all over Chitrana forest, Chitrana village and Tera village. He had roughly the idea. Here I learnt that how the CO came to know was that while he was talking to me, our signal platoon commander, he was Subedar Rafiq probably, he overheard an enemy talking to the battalion commander, was talking to his company commander who had come in the first phase of attack. And he was first talking to Gurkheli, and probably in that Gurkheli, the CO suddenly started talking in English. In that he asked the location of a company commander. So the company commander said that I have completed my task, I am sitting on a high ground, I am digging my position. The CO said that, okay, I want to come over to you. And the company commander said, okay, I'll fire a very light, and you see the very light, and that very light after seeing that very light, the CO wanted to come to reach him. So this was the position when the very light was fired. That was fired next to our battalion headquarters. And probably that was one of the blessing in disguise, that the CO came to know the exact enemy location also. So CO planned his own attack, and I believe my 12 platoon was with the CO, under command the adjutant, with CO, Subedar Major, Dhobi Nai, and when they attacked, they spread over and showed that it's a battalion attack coming on to them. And this tactics I was also using against my counterattacks, that I would spread out my men and show the enemy that we are not only 50 or 60 people, we are almost about 200 people. So we will try to make noises, and I would rush people right and left, so that keep shouting and rushing for them. So first attack, meantime those tanks which were promised to me to join me in my first counterattack had reached the battalion headquarters. And I was given that task, that troop of tank to counterattack this area of Chatrana village. So you can imagine the men who were so excited, and they were so overwhelmed with their motivation, that one of my men, actually while you are attacking with the tanks, you are supposed to go along with the tanks. The infantry and tanks are going together. One of my men even crossed the tanks, and one of the tanks overran one of my Jawan also, our own tank, I remember that. And I remember when we attacked the Chatrana forest, before that, I think his name was Captain Kazim, the troop commander, and I asked him that, what can you do for me? I want to rush immediately along with the tank in the forest. He said, our doctrine says that tank cannot go to the forest, so I have to stop before the forest. So we quickly decided that, okay, if not to the center of the forest, at least you could go 20-30 yards inside the forest, so that I want to get that impact, because I have very few people with me. So he agreed with me while going in for attack in the forest. And there I remember when we went into attack, and the first person in that company, machine gun that is still lying in the battalion headquarters, was captured by me personally. I was with my company headquarters, 3 men, and when I saw the machine gun was firing at tank, and I could locate him in the forest, so from the right side I went, and we captured that man also, and machine gun later on also. So in the forest we re-established our position. We got the enemy cleared from the forest. So enemy when we went into attack, the enemy rushed to the Chatrana village also, and the Tera village. So when I gave the completion report to CO that I have not cleared the Chatrana forest, then he says, what the hell are you talking? The enemy is still behind you now. That Chatrana village and Chatrana forest was on the right side and little behind me. So he has to, you have to go in for a attack to the Chatrana forest, Chatrana village. So I remember we went into Chatrana. By then I had lost some men, many were wounded and all that. So we rushed to that Chatrana village, and we attacked that, and then Tera village. I will now just conclude it in a small manner that in the village, when we went close to the village, the Indians had thoroughly dug in. And each house was made into a fortress, and all the gun positions were there, and they were firing from there. So out of blue, I found a man. It was again a blessing. A platoon in the platoon headquarters, one of the platoon headquarters. He was carrying a bazooka, then 3.5-inch rocket launcher, and he had 2 rocket launchers, rockets with him. So I told him to fire these 2 rockets at that wall of the village. So because I knew that if I go straight onto the village like this, then it will be probably suicidal. It will not possible for me to overcome that. So I wanted to break into the village and enter the village, and from there I felt that go onto the rooftop, and from there then we will be sitting behind the enemy. And we actually had the idea of how the village was constructed and all that, how the houses were located. So he fired two of these rounds at the wall and there was one house. So we dropped that, we got the entrance there, and probably 2 people were killed there also, Indians. And we rushed in. We were left with only, I think I was left with about 20-30 people. So we rushed into it and went into the rock. And there, of course, they were billeting and they were fighting and all that. And the first lies were coming in. And then we were shouting and all that, surrender yourself and all that, and we managed to get hold of them. And I think at that time I got 42 men came out of that village with their weapon and all that. 3 officers were there. The company commanders were good. One of the company commander, Major, I believe, Chaudhary was his name. And so I remember my men took him on the stretcher and brought them out. So when this was all in the morning, first when I got these men out, and I put them on the line, on the wall, and told them that, because I had seen Major Afzal, his body was riddled with bullets by the Indians when they were going back. And there was one Havaldar, he was also, his stomach was cut with the kukri and all that. So in those people, I inquired that who's the one who has killed the major of my battalion. That was Major Afzal. So first they were not giving any information. So I still remember that I told them to face the wall and I will count 10. And if you do not, that man should come out who has killed that Major Afzal. If it doesn't, then I'll kill each one of you. I think I had 42 or 48 men at that time. Rest again we captured from the right of the village. So luckily I counted 1, 2 to about 8, and I was about to say 9 and 10. I had no intention to kill them, but certainly I was trying to bluff them. And then I left. I saw one of my Hunar Shah was the Naik Hunar Shah. He was carrying our Shaheed on his shoulder and he was trying to bring him back. So he saw an Indian soldier, Indian Naik, in the corner of the village with his chain gun aiming at us. He was about to fire at us, and he saw him and he killed him. It came out suddenly almost that I had counted 10 and I started killing him. So the Subedar came out and he said that Maharaj, aapka dharam bada sach hai. So this is the Havaldar, company Havaldar Major. He has killed Major Afzal. You are one of the company commander. So I asked him, why did you kill him? So he said, sir, he was on my charge, so we were running back, we were coming to the village, so I could not drag him, so I shot him, I killed him. And the other one was a Havaldar, his stomach was captured, and he indicated the other man who killed his. Yeah. So I told that major, that incident, I said that he is to be quickly court-martialed and he is to be sentenced to death. So we took him on the firing squad, we pulled those 2 men, because they had done a cold blood murder, and so we killed them. So this was the situation we were building up. I remember all the prisoners were, then the CO sent a Subedar Major to me when I explained to him that now I've restored the position, I've captured so many prisoners, which is with me. The CO, instead of appreciating me, I mean, you can imagine the situation at that time. I was totally exhausted, from night from 8 o'clock till morning 8 o'clock. The CO started abusing me. Okay, he said that forget about the prisoners, you know what is happening. The enemy, other attack is coming. So you have to quickly re-establish yourself and face the enemy, because you have to leave the prisoners. I'm sending the Subedar Major and he will bring the prisoner back. So meantime the Subedar Major came and I handed over the prisoners to Subedar Major, and that major who was injured he was stretcher, so he was taken on stretcher back. So I quickly went ahead of the village and all that. One thing I still remember, that while the Indians were running back, at that time when I went across the over the village, I saw one Indian soldier running in the field. So I remember Havaldar and he was going to do Havaldar. I told him, go and kill him, sort him out. So after some time I heard a shot from that place and I saw Havaldar and coming back, and he was bringing the steel helmet and his equipment and everything. And in that steel helmet, I saw the picture of a photograph of his family. And the weapon which I saw that soldier, the Indian soldier, he was running back, and imagine while he was running, he had thrown his bolt because he wanted to invalidate his weapon. So this was the training I could see the Indians. They were so well trained because they did not want their weapon to be used against them. So quickly, while he was running, he had just thrown his bolt off the weapon. So these are the small events which comes to your mind when it comes to training, it comes to operational activity when you are going through. So all this activity which I see, the area which we covered, at night we started off, and then of course the Indians we killed, and then I buried the Indians. I will show you the photograph, and where when the enemy came onto our position and they were throwing bombs, 1,000-ton bombs. And if you have to live in this world, I remember a position of my a Havaldar and a Naik was managing the machine gun of my company. The Indian came and threw 1,000-pound bomb. And it exactly landed on the position of my machine gun position. So I, just in my hand, I prayed Fatiha for them. I said, God bless them. He was my very dear soldiers. I remember he was very dear to me. He was a good football player also and all that. And I almost a tear came to my eyes. I said, but when I went to that big ditch, the water tank which had been made by that 1,000-ton bomb, and I thought that my machine gun and everything must have gone. And suddenly I saw some movement in the sand, and I saw these two Johnnies coming out of the sand. And it was very, I cannot forget that moment, how happy I felt to see my two men, because I love those men. They were very interesting. Razi Shah was his name. Later on he became Subedar also. And so they were alive. And imagine a bomb dropping, 1,000-ton dropping almost on their position, and still they revived. I felt that the sand which took them along with that explosion and throw them away, and they were in the sand and they came out. So this was the events. Many people got embraced Shahadat, and we captured many enemies. Another thing was that after this event finished, when the ceasefire came in, and I will narrate a very interesting story of the ceasefire. When the ceasefire took place, the CU ordered us to reoccupy as much area you can. And when I came to that minefield, the engineers had closed the minefield gaps. So it was at that time when I learned that the engineers had closed the minefield gap, and the CU had ordered to capture the position, the forward position we had. So I felt that I asked my men to, okay, let's go across. Now the engineers cannot come and open the minefield, so we will lose time. So I felt that the first man that I still remember, Bahadur Shah was the name, Havaldar, and I told him that you lead and I'll follow you, and then we had the platoon almost with me to go across and recapture that area. So he was reluctant. I could feel that the war was over, the ceasefire was given, the Indian dead bodies were lying right and left. So I remember that I took the name of Allah and prayed to him that if he had survived me with such an intense war operation, if I have to die, I will die probably in this event. So I told everybody, just walk behind me. So believe me, I walked through the minefield without any assistance. So I just keep following me on my footsteps. So we crossed that. It was just getting the first light. So I am talking about an incident when I crossed the minefield and then I went left. There was a high ground where we had a listening post. And in that high ground, our machine gun position was there. When I reached that place, that was across the Chitrana forest, and I saw some Indian digging that place. Indian had come in naturally. So I also crawled in and came very close to them with all my 12 men with me. Almost about 20 men I had with me. So I shouted to them. I remember that. So there was a Sikh who responded to my shouting. He said, "Keda bhai?" So I said, I am a company commander here and I want to talk to you. So, because we were very, very close, we could just vocally exchange our talks. So I walked forward. It was getting close to first light. So we came together to each other, and I said that he was a major also. I said, we are sitting too close to each other. I would recommend that you go 400 paces back and I go 400 paces back. So we have about 500-yard distance, so we will not have the aim fire. It is good for you, good for us, because our men are burnt up. They may, some bloody fool can, trigger-happy man can fire at you, or you can fire at us. So it will be good for us. So he said, I'll ask my commanding officer. So I remember I told him that, look, I am taking a decision as a company commander. I am not asking my commanding officer that I have to take 400 step backs. Can't you have won the war, you have almost reached our area. Can't you take this decision? So I pumped him. So he decided, okay. I remember he went and he blew the whistle and told my men. He said that we will shout 1, 2, 3 until 400. I said, we will also do the same thing. He didn't know how many men I had with me. I had about 20 men only. So he was full of, with almost all company, almost over 150 people were there. So he just blew the whistle and told them to walk back. So when he started moving back, I told, I remember Khan Bahadur was my Havaldar with me. I said, the moment they walked down to that hill position, so quickly run to that place and just occupy that place with that machine gun. So I had the machine gun with me. So as soon as they moved down, so Havaldar immediately rushed with the machine gun to that high ground, I remember. And I think at hardly about 2, 3, 4 minutes had passed, and he realizes that these people have come back to that position where they were standing. So we had gone into that bunker, we had built up that bunker, that was a listening post area, the Indian had also dug in, that was a very strong position. So he went into that place. So that major started shouting that you should go back. And I said, nobody will answer, just keep quiet. He started firing a very red light and all that, and some air firing also, but he did not fire at our position. We did, because I could now see them, they were down and we could fire at them. I said nobody will fire just because ceasefire has been announced. So there the ceasefire had ended, so the first light came and all that. Then probably the 11 Punjab company came and took over from that. And the distance from that machine gun position, which went later on also, it was only 20 to 30 yard distance from our position and the Indian position. It was very interesting. We could see each other, we could shout at each other. So later on that major became my friend, and I remember he sent me some stardust and some records of, I think, Pakiza Firam and all that. And in return he asked me a aftershave lotion, Kingsman aftershave lotion, I still remember that. That was being made by Lahore Laboratories or somewhere in Lahore Chemicals. So I asked that major, his name was Amrik Singh, he was from 17 Punjab probably, Indian regiment. And I said, you don't shave, why do you want this aftershave lotion? So he said, I like his smell. It was very nice. So we had then there was a ceasefire, and then I was given the honor to return all the Indian dead bodies, which I had buried them, to return to the Indian companies and things. So first we went in to return the bodies of 3x9 Gorkha Regiment. The CO came in, and I met him also, and I remember that he was having tears in his eyes. He told us that in '65 war, he was at Batapur, and he had trained his battalion so well that he could never expect that this battalion in first action will be butchered and finished off. And you can imagine, about 90 we had captured, 263 wounded, and many was injured, so almost battalion was wiped off. And later on, when I returned, they had given us proper coffins and all that. Then I was also given the honor to return the dead bodies of 4x9 4 grenadiers also. So when I was returning the 4 grenadiers' dead body, I remember they did not bring us any coffin, so I had to shed off my blankets, wrap their bodies. And believe me, this is a very interesting thing, that when I took out the bodies of the Indian soldiers, because I also buried my men at the same time, at the same location, at the same weather condition, none of my soldiers gave any smell. They were just like as if they had just died. Whereas when I took out the bodies of the Indian soldiers, when we returned to them, I could not stand next to them. I had to use mask to return the dead bodies. So it was the events that took place. And 75 war at Shakargarh, I personally feel, was the event of a collective strength of our battalion. The SU was leading us all the time, and of course the men. It's not possible an officer can achieve any result. It has to be a collective effort. The men of each Jawan, and remember that I had 25% men with me as a Bengalis. We sometimes call them, they did not perform well. But as far as I am concerned, they did the excellent job. They were more motivated than us, because when I first went into attack, the first bullet came and hit my signalman, his name was probably Yanuddin and all that. When I was going in a first attack, the enemy machine gun came and they fired, and the first attempt was, I had hardly moved about 10 to 15 paces for attack, when a machine gun had hit him, bang on his forehead, and he died at that time. So I took over the wireless set from him, and I was carrying the wireless set with me also for some time, and then he gave it to another man to just follow me. And I remember that. And when he was getting out and going in an attack position, forming a position, and he was abusing Indians, Tamara Saraka, something like that. Many abuses he was getting, but unfortunately he embraced Shahada. So there are many events in this life which took place at Shakargarh. We were all soldiers. We had to go there. We have done nothing extra. That was part of our duty. That was our duty to defend the nation in whatever capacity, small or big. But I feel very sorry when I go back to the history that we lost in East Pakistan. The same soldiers who were fighting in West Pakistan, they were equally motivated, they were equally brave. I do not know how they failed there. Maybe some other factors which can be contributed to their failure. But here is the event which took place at Shakargarh, a small unit action, collectively as commanding officer and all that. In this whole battalion action, you will see that it was only basically the commanding officer, then our company, my company, and partly the Alpha Kawali company also. They defended that. I was in the attacking position, and in the defense, the Ali company fought very bravely. Sulaiman Sarkar was one of the Bengali who stuck to his ground and threw grenade onto the enemy before they went back to the Chitrana forest, and they were lying down position. So if the God has given you life, nothing to worry about that. If you have to live long, you just do not forget those events when you are fighting, going straight to the enemy, who is firing at us. And I remember that. This was a short and brief what I wanted to convey to the events which took place. I can of course go in for lot more details of each event, but I feel that the time is short, so I just want to brief you of this. Now I can recollect that the event which gave us strength for fighting to the Indians, that was basically your motivation. Your belief in God, your belief in Almighty Allah to give you that life which He has given it to you. If He has to take it, He will take it, irrespective whatever you do, wherever you go. There has been many incidents in my life where I could see that people had died right in front of you. They had come to that place to die. So my message to all of you is that when you are in uniform, when you have been tasked to do something, it is not that you have done some sort of a ihsan to others. It is your national duty, it's your personal duty. And if you have done, it's award or no award, is your biggest award is that your self-satisfaction. Now I look back to my company action, my Jawan, I love them. And luckily I had the honor to be the colonel of the battalion, twice of that battalion. When I go back to that battalion sometime and I visit them, and I remember all those men, they love me. And that was the greatest feeling I enjoy in my after retirement and all that people give me the same sort of respect and that feeling. All those people who were with me in the attacks and all that, leaving aside other people's, the battalions and all that, each one liked. And so they also liked the commanding officer at that time. So here I believe, I feel that I close my just narration of the incident, the action. And in that context, I will say that the enemy, I remember we have the war record of the Indian operation in that area. Their commanding officer, I think the corps commander had said that if you can keep your wits about, and there is no rewarding results if you stay in your position. If you stay, you keep your wits about, and be alive and be brave. See that you can overwhelm the enemy. So we were a very small number. If you can see the strength of the enemy coming in brigades and with weapons and all that, we had 3 enemy tanks destroyed in our locations. I remember my 75mm RR destroyed the enemy tanks, which I had with me. 3 tanks were destroyed. I still carry the 5 Browning machine gun as a souvenir of the Indian tank which I had destroyed, my company had destroyed, the small in that position. So these are the events. I am grateful to 8th Division to remember us, and I also remember the contribution of other battalions which were part of 14th Para Brigade. And they all did well, everybody did well. Maybe or incident may have happened where the people like our listening post, they just came back without informing. We just came back to the Charlie company position, the Chata company position, did not inform the CO that they had seen the enemy. Had the listening post had done their duty properly, probably things would have been different. Or maybe, probably we were not given that opportunity to to use our muscles against the enemy. I feel very satisfied. At the same time, I acknowledge the bravery of the Indians, because in the short time, the Indians had built up such a strong defenses. Because later on, when all the defense, the study period took place in the Retd village and all that, the Abudurrahman Commission, and when they came over here, we showed that they saw the Indian position after withdrawing, going into a village defense. It was a masterpiece defense. It was a masterpiece defense. I remember that to take them out of that village, it was a miracle. Because I think the God had given us that strength to fight the bigger enemy, bigger in strength, but they were equally brave. I must acknowledge that, because they were also fighting till the last. Because Chaudhary was wounded when I got them out, and he was